when we expanded and we went across the street, because we looked all over town, but when we ended up going literally right across the street, we adopted these volleyball courts. Got to use them. Let's monetize the courts. Let's start leagues. But then our customer changed, and it was like, oh, holy crap. It's like chicks in bikinis and like ripped dudes like drinking beer, but they drink beer. But like they do
could be talking about me. I've played volleyball there a few times.
Could be talking specifically talking about Brad.
Yeah.
But
Filling out mediums, Brad, one medium at a time.
That's my whole goal.
Y'all ready for this?
Welcome to the Be Different Brewery Tour. Today we're kicking it at 50 West.
Yeah.
Produced and edited by Nick Given and Greg Wichard.
Yeah.
Hosted as always by Brad Redford.
Well, everyone's been drinking, so I guess we'll just cheers to the start of this.
Yeah, man.
We'll crack it open.
I'm gonna open up this guy.
Let's get it
Cheers,
rolling.
guys.
Cheers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, and Nick and Greg, you might as well just keep this in the edit right here.
Yeah, we can do that. This is
And if you're listening to the podcast right now, go ahead and grab a beer. I think that's important. That's what you should do. I don't care if it's 8 a.m., 7 a.m., 6 a.m.
Unless you're driving.
Well, you know who the Be Different podcast is. You got your host, Brad Redford, Nick Given, Greg Wichard across the street, and then we have our most important person that is here today. I'm going to try and actually say this, Max. The VP of Strategy and Operations.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
Yep, that's
Here
right.
at 50 West Brewing Company, which everybody should know and be aware of. Max, how you doing? And thank you for having us.
Good, man. I'm doing great. Thanks for coming out. Yeah, appreciate you guys doing a little spotlight on us.
Absolutely. So we're pumped to get this out. And I think, first of all, our listeners, we just want to know, they want to know who you are. So maybe explain how you got involved in the beer industry and what your day-to-day looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the business started in 2012. I actually went to school at Ohio University, and party school, a lot of beer.
Given's probably been there.
Once or twice.
We actually sell beer now, which I'm really excited about. This is a recent thing. But so I went to school there. I studied biology. I was like pre-med track, and then I don't know, but by the end of school, I was really sick of school, and I didn't want to take tests anymore. And I had this idea that I wanted to do this 2-year program to become an anesthetist, which it's the team of people that work for the anesthesiologist.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, I'm going to do like a gap year. I'm going to find something cool to do. And I started working in a lab in Springdale. And then I don't know if I read it somewhere or if somebody told me. Somehow I got it in my head that alcohol companies needed a scientist. So I was like, okay, my strategy is just to figure out how to get in at the ground floor of one of these guys. And then I'll have a fun job to have a gap year at. And so I found 50 West when they were still a landing page. Craft beer, the third wave of craft beer in Cincinnati was still in its infancy at this point. So this is pre-Matry, pre-Rheingeist.
Wait, so what year was this?
This was 2012. So
Okay.
This was the same year that the business started. I found their landing page.
Okay.
Probably about a month before they got going.
All right, so 2012, that is a significant year, but you already know that because you listened to our first interview with Listerman Brewing Company. And if you haven't done that, please just go ahead and do it after this. Anyways, for a quick reminder, in 2012, a law was passed that was pretty significant. This law allowed breweries in Ohio to serve beer on site in their tap rooms.
I sent some emails, finally got a response, basically the week they opened. I showed up, talked to, I was actually just showed up at the bar and just ordered a beer before I told him who I was. Hey, I'm this kid that's been emailing you. And I actually sat down next to one of the founders. And then the bartender was the other founder. It was really family run.
Oh, roots.
Yeah,
the roots of
absolutely.
the whole thing. Okay.
So I have a beer too, and then I tell them who I am, and they immediately interview me. They pull me into the other room, interview me, hire me on the spot.
Were you allowed to bring your beer?
I was. It was a pretty relaxed inventory environment. And so they hired me on the spot. And my goal was to be in the back and be a part of the process of making beer. I was all right, I really understand fermentation science. I want to be a brewer. And they were like, hey, that's not really how the business works. And we're so small right now, we can't afford to just hire a second brewer right now. We've got one guy in the back working. What you can do is show up every day at 8 a.m., learn the process, and then at night work in the bar.
All right, I just want to highlight this section from Max. Now, more than any other time, you have to know that with any job, especially early on, be flexible, listen, hustle, and things are probably going to work out for you.
And I was like, okay, I'll do that. So I worked in the bar. I like hosted to start. So like you would walk in. If you walked in like December of 2012, I was at the front host stand. We didn't even have food. And people would walk in and like it was kind of odd that there was a host there, and they would just be like, "Hey, like I'm here to drink." I'm like, "Yeah, you can do that here. Here's the menu." So I'd walk them through the different flavors of beer, and we only serve craft beer and only our own beer. So there was a lot of like, because craft beer was so young in Cincinnati at the time, the consumer was very uneducated and they didn't know what they wanted. So they would come in.
Why don't you have Bud Light?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'm still asking that question, but go ahead.
So much of that, and we were like, okay, like try the Kolsch, and then like from there, try the wheat, and then from there, try. So we'd like take people on this journey, and we would encourage people to buy flights, and the snowball started rolling, and then the consumer got really educated to this point where like consumers know what kind of hops they like, which is wild, but. Yeah, so from there, I became the first hired-on brewer here once we expanded the brew pub. And then Bobby, one of the owners here, grabbed me one day. I think I was just asking too many questions at this point, and he was like, "Hey, we're gonna start wholesaling the beer. We had been getting calls from bars and restaurants around town, just being like, "Hey, we want the beer," and we would send it out, and probably politically incorrect. We refer to this point in our history as the girlfriend game, where like we would send kegs to like our girlfriend, like some random account would be like, oh, like it'd be like Sips Cafe. We'd be like, oh, Mike, like we love Mike Burke, like this guy's the man, like let's send him a keg. He wants to have our beer on tap, and then it would go over super well, and the beer would kick, and then he'd call back and be like, can I get another one? Well, we had already made like 5 more girlfriends. And then like be like, oh shit, like we gave away the beer to him. Like, hold on, like just wait. So we were like trying to keep all our girlfriends happy. And I was not.
And that never works out.
No,
that never works out.
Everyone knows the end of that story. So like didn't work. So we increased capacity and whatnot, but we needed a more efficient sales team. So Bobby pulled me out, and it was the perfect time for a brewer to become a salesperson. I had the right personality to do it, but it was at the time there was a lot of distributors out there trying to push craft beer, and they didn't really see the movement coming. They weren't as well educated, and really I could walk into these accounts and be like, hey, I made this beer. This is how I made it. This is what it tastes like. This is why I think it'll sell.
This is why your people are going to like it. This is why you're going to make money.
And then they buy it, and I'd be like, okay, I'll come back. Like, tell me when your pre-shift meeting is, and I'll come back and I'll talk to all your salespeople, and I'll just reverberate this. And yeah, it worked. And so I just started, brick by brick, just building accounts, and then we expanded in 2016 to across the street, which totally changed the business. But for the sake of this part of the conversation, we got way more beer to sell, so we grew our sales team. And I was the only guy on the sales team, so it was like, okay, now I get to be the sales manager and teach 2 other people how to sell. And then we kept going from there, and eventually we stayed off cans, and this was like a purposeful strategy, but we became according to like there's draft surveys that go around from distributors, we were selling so much draft that we were the 3rd most like prevalent local in town, and at this point on draft, like at accounts around the city, and at this point there was probably 50 breweries, and we were like, okay, there's this natural correlation between draft and package. Like if you can sell X amount of draft, you're going to move X amount of package. But we hadn't launched the cans yet. So the distributors all started looking at us and saying like, oh, holy shit, like these guys can like move into cans and do something because they've created a brand. And so then we linked up with Stagnaro Distributing in Hamilton County and 12 counties in Northern Kentucky. And then that's when I was promoted, and I hired a new sales manager.
And that is a complete hustle operation game from biology to beer.
Yeah, man.
From biology to beer, the story of Max.
Yeah, how did your parents feel about that transition? I mean, did they understand it? I mean, you go from studying biology and in a profession that everyone is like, yeah, that's a good profession to get into. You're going to be able to make money. There's going to be jobs available. And then you're like, I want to go to a startup in 2012 that was 50 West, and obviously it's not what it is today. So I mean, how were you able to communicate that?
Yeah, my family was always super supportive of everything that I do and everything that I wanted to do, so there was really no question of it. It was just like, hey, if that's like what you think is right and you want to watch this pan out, then go for it. If it didn't pan out the way did, then possibly something would have been said at some point in time. But it progressed in a very like organic and successful way. So
Did you finish your education at Ohio, or no? Were you like, I'm just going straight to beer now?
I did. Yeah, I graduated with a degree in biology.
All
Oh,
right.
nice. What year would you say where there was like an oh shit moment, like we need to make more beer? Like you knew like the influx.
We need to make so much
like,
more beer.
The interest was so high. Was there a specific time that you remember where you're like, we need to make a lot more of this?
Absolutely. So it's actually happened a few times, and the most notable time was when we first started selling beer. Before we had like a lot of programs in place on like how to sell the beer and how to, everything, like how to deliver it, how to become a good trade partner. We self-distributed our beer, so there was like a lot of learnings along the way. But one of the notable memories was at one point when I had first started, I just hustled. Like I ran around town as hard as I could. I was like, oh, I'm going to prove that I can do this and do it well. And I sold the entire pub out of beer. and like people would come in here, and by the time we had realized I basically had done it, we only had what was on tap left, and there was like 7 beers. No, I'm sorry, there was 5 beers on tap, and we have a 6-piece flight. So like people were coming in that weekend, and we were like, "Hey, like which one do you guys want 2 of?" So like that was the point where we were like, "Oh shit! Like we have to protect the Mecca. You have to protect the tap room."
All right. And speaking further to expansion and growth, 50 West was recently listed as one of the fastest growing small and independent craft brewing companies across the country. Early next year, 50 West will be adding yet another location. This brew pub will be in Chillicothe, of course, on Route 50.
And then we created sales programs. And I remember at one point, like way before the expansion, like we could only sell 20 or 30 kegs per week, and I could do that by like Tuesday. And I was so like the rest.
Cushiest job in America.
Yeah, so for the rest of the week, like I wasn't gonna go home just because I loved this place and the people, and so. I just started like working on marketing. I like pulled out a camera. I got good at using a DSLR and just like.
Oh, now you're talking my language.
Yeah, there we go.
This podcast just jumped from 20 minutes to 1 hour.
So
I don't know if we want to jump down that whole rabbit hole with you guys.
No, I just think
the
that-
listeners are going to be just completely lost over what's going on.
I think that you don't want to jump down that hole because you won't know what you're talking
Hey,
about.
Brad set the microphones up today.
I did, and I
You
actually
did.
set up the microphones actually very well. Very
good
well.
at tech over here.
And so Bobby is the owner, correct? Mm-hmm. And so when Bobby started it, how many people were involved at that time?
So there was 3 guys to start.
And then did that include you?
4 guys with Bobby's dad. I'm not a founder.
Okay.
So 4 technically.
And how big are you guys today?
So it's still just Bobby and his dad running the company.
Okay.
So there's just 2 guys left of the 4 who started. I think when we like
Left as in business relationships, or do they leave us in general?
Business relationships.
Okay.
Yeah, no, everyone's still alive.
I got a little sad there for a second.
And it was all
I'm glad we clarified that, though. I really
didn't
am.
know what was going on.
all very amicable splits.
Okay, good.
Everybody's like doing well. I still keep in contact with the other guys.
Okay, good.
But there was probably, I could be wrong about this, like 10 or 12 people to start. And then when the restaurant opened, it immediately jumped to like 30 part-time people. We're probably at like 70 people right now.
Mm-hmm.
The restaurant still probably employs like 30 people. And then there's people across the street too over there. But like our the brew and sales and like administrative side of the business encompasses the rest of that 70.
It's awesome.
You guys have a lot going on here. You got volleyball, you got canoeing, you got everything going on.
Yeah, man. It's
It's kind of like a brew pub / YMCA.
It's like a fun zone.
Yeah, it's like you can pretty much do whatever you want at 50 West.
Yeah.
We refer to it as our campus, and it's
YMCA.
It's really purposeful. I mean, if you guys want to go down that piece, that's
No.
Oh, yeah.
No,
No.
map that out. Like, because, so day one, right? We want to make beer, and we want people to like our beer. And then you get to the point where like, well, shit, people like to drink beer and then eat. And then it blows up to, well, how can we keep them here longer, right? So they can buy more of our beer, right? So like kind of walk down that path because you took infancy and then now you have a campus.
yeah. So it was let me start from the beginning here. So the pub was always opened with the intention of having a restaurant. It wasn't opened with food originally, but we were working on the food piece. And I think we had some snacks here just so you could drink and eat some food.
Yeah.
So then we open up the restaurant and we're like, okay, cool. We're this restaurant that makes its own beer. We're, and like I said before, craft beer is like really in its infancy in Cincinnati. But the wave's like really pushing. Like you can see this thing coming. And guys,
not everyone saw that coming though. That's pretty impressive. Like not everyone saw it coming.
No, and we didn't see it coming. Like the best story, and when you guys go to talk to them, I mean, the best story of the guys who had the most foresight is Rheingeist. They really knew what to do. But we saw enough coming that was like, okay, craft beer is going to take off. We can like create this cool brew pub, makes its own beer. It's gonna be a restaurant. And then we saw the wholesale piece of it once Rheingeist started blazing that path, and so did Madry. And we were like, okay, like you can really become this wholesale entity. And then when we expanded and we went across the street, because we looked all over town, but when we ended up going literally right across the street, we adopted these volleyball courts, and that's really that was the catalyst that changed the brand and the way we thought about the brand, and it became more of this lifestyle brand. Because we were like, okay, the new building's got these volleyball courts. Got to use them. Let's monetize the courts. Let's start leagues. But then our customer changed, and it was like, oh, holy crap. It's like chicks in bikinis and like ripped dudes like drinking beer. But they drink beer. But like they do
Could be
it
talking about me. I've played volleyball there a few times.
specifically talking about Brad.
Yeah.
But
Filling out mediums, Brad. One medium at a time.
That's my whole goal.
he's the background to all of our
It's a slim medium.
So yeah, the customer changed. And then when the customer changed, we were like, oh, this thing is so much more than making good beer. Because we started looking at the landscape, and it was growing so fast. And we use this example a lot, but like almost every brewery, whether it's on their Instagram or in a sales pitch with Kroger, can literally walk in, put this beer down, and be like, this is the best beer you ever had in your life. And like, that's not a good pitch anymore. It used to be that, but now it's like the barrier for entry. Mm-hmm. So like, if you're not making good beer, you're not even in the conversation. So like, I don't even like to talk about like how good the beer is anymore. Like we've won JBF and World Beer Cup, and like we have some like the most notable medals in beer, awards in beer. But like, I don't even like talking about that, because I'm like, hey, that just gets you to play the game. Now it's like, how do you build a brand? Mm-hmm. So this kind of goes into like your last question too, but like how we see it is like, hey, this is way more about branding, and it's about providing someone an experience. So we that's how we think about it. Experiential branding. Like, can we get somebody to come here, have a good time, participate in something with the community, whether it's the running groups or the volleyball leagues, or going out with their buddies on a nice, beautiful day on the Little Miami River, going out for a bike ride, and doing that with like-minded people over beer. So then when you go to Kroger and you're going to your buddy's house for a party or to watch the game, and you go to pull a six-pack, it's like, oh, that's the one I drink when I play volleyball. That's a great beer.
Remind you of a good experience almost.
Absolutely.
I'm sure, well, you talk about the education piece a little bit, but back in 2012, I mean, people in the community, and I'm sure people that you were selling to, didn't know really a whole lot about craft beer or local beer at all, where now you have so many, like your pitches are becoming more and more intense and more advanced. So now with sales reps, like say I'm a sales rep that wants to come on and sell for 50 West now, like what does that education piece look like for me, and how different is that from when you started to where you are now?
Oh my God, so different. And it's mostly driven through data now, which we just didn't have before. And experience, right? So like we know what that, like what's appropriate to do and say in the like the selling situations. But also now it's driven by data. We can, and before we didn't have that. When I was walking in 2013, 14 into accounts and banging down doors and being like, hey, like you should carry our beer. I had a route that I probably wrote like on the back of a napkin. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And it was like, oh, like buy a keg. And if you bought it, it was just like, how many kegs could I sell in a week? And now it's like, how many points of distribution do we have? Like what brand, it's like what brands are selling.
You had to rewrite the book, right? You wrote down your guys' formula as you did it.
Right. Oh yeah. We were learning as we went. And yeah, now there's absolutely like procedures and processes and there's sales strategies and stories behind the brands, and there's sales materials and yeah. So we just brought on a new rep for our Dayton territory this week, and we've been onboarding them. Now it's like a full week process to onboard now.
Where before it was like interview at the bar.
You're-
and
you're
jump
on-
in,
you're
like,
on
we're gonna
board.
figure it out.
Dude, before it was like, here's a growler full of beer. Like, just go out there and see what you can
Sell
do.
it, dude.
Yeah.
Sell it. Come back with no beer.
Yeah, exactly.
Come back with no beer.
Well, and this is the second brewery that we've been to do an interview. But I mean, we can tell when we're interviewing you guys, the passion is there, the hustle
Oh,
is
it flows
there,
out.
the heart is there. Like, I mean, we can tell that you guys absolutely enjoy, what you're doing. I mean, you talk about how you got started, how you're a big piece of it. But what is that for you? Like every day coming into 50 West, knowing that you're a huge part of this team.
It's awesome. I don't know how to describe it in another way. That's a good term.
It's actually good enough.
It's a terrible word, but it's so fun. I mean, like every day is kind of a new challenge. There are, I'm more focused on the sales side of the business than the front of house end, but I do stuff on both sides, and it's just super fun trying to think about it from the consumer's point of view and how, because it's this giant telephone game, except for here, we're direct to consumer obviously in here, but like on the wholesale side, like how does someone end up with this in their fridge? And it's this wild journey till it gets to their lips, but like we have some influence over that, and we want to try to influence as much as possible. And it's fun to think about that, and then how to deploy our team in a way that it gets to them in a fashion that they can drink it and be like, this is awesome beer, and I like 50 West, and I get the story that they're trying to tell, and I want to go there, or I've been there and it was awesome, and this beer tastes even better because of that.
I gotta ask the same
Go
question
ahead.
I asked Jason.
Yeah.
Weirdest, of all the places you've gone, to pile up all those awards. What are the weirdest beer you've ever had? Worst, weirdest, highest alcohol percentage. I don't care.
Oh man, it's funny because like if you asked me that in like 2015, I probably would be like, oh dude, I have this answer.
Yeah.
But like it's gotten so crazy.
You've had
It's so hard to answer the question now because like I've had so many just off the wall wacky beers, and I'm like, I have no idea how who came up with this. Like it's like the band name generator, like on
Yeah,
the internet,
yeah.
where you're like it just throws random words together. It's like brewers have done everything up to this point that like one of the things that whenever we go on a trip together, I usually on the way back, I'll ask everybody like, hey, what was the most memorable beer that you had this trip? And like, it doesn't have to be the best beer that you had. It was just like, it could be the worst, or it could just be like, it could be the coolest moment. Right?
Some that stands out.
Yeah. And the conversation is always different, but recently we were in Denver for the Craft Brewers Conference, and I asked everybody the question, and my most memorable beer was, this isn't exactly an answer to your question, but
It's okay. I like where it's going.
my most memorable beer was we went to a bar called Black Project. Super cool space. It's a small little bar in Denver, brewery rather, and they make only sour beer.
Okay, so sour beers are sour, and I know that's a shock, but some can have more of a fruity flavor, while some can make your lips pucker like you're sucking down a warhead. Either way, they are an acquired taste, and Greg Wichard, he has found that.
And their whole bar is this giant old airplane wing, and the whole thing's like very like Area 51, like CIA redacted document.
Only
like,
sour beers?
only sour. beer.
Wow.
Greg, are you hard right now?
Yeah, right? I love that. That sounds good.
And yeah, I drank this beer called Magic Lantern, and I think they switched the fruits in it, but it had cantaloupe and stuff in it, and it was awesome. And I was just like, oh, this is great beer. And we had a good time while we were there too. We were there with some of our other brewery friends, and I think that, like I said, not a good answer to your question.
No, it
because,
was. I enjoyed it.
I can't think of something off the top of my head. That I'm
So,
like,
Max,
oh,
you're
that's
part
it.
of the sales process a lot, right?
Yeah.
Sell me on this beer.
Oh, geez, putting me on the spot, man.
Wow, you're really putting him in a
That
in a
beer's
position
awesome,
right now.
man.
Yeah, so that you're about to drink Doom Pedal. Doom Pedal is actually named after one of our employees who passed away. His name was Alan White. So back in the day, when Alan worked here, he used to work in the kitchen. He would jam out every single day with this genre of music called doom metal. And
Is that like the screaming metal where there's literally just someone
Like,
yelling into the
Yes.
microphone?
like he would be the first guy here, like prepping food, and you'd walk in the door, and it would just be like I don't even know how to make the noise. It's like screamo metal, like crazy music, and he would just like pump it back there, and you'd go back there, and he had this awesome handlebar mustache, and he'd always have a smile on his face, and he was just like a super cool dude. We actually used to. we still do like have this joke. There was like, who's the coolest guy at 50 West? And like, Alan was always the answer. I was like, hands down, Alan. And unfortunately, he passed away, but his last name is White. And we were like, let's brew a beer in Alan's memory. So we brewed a white ale. And we threw it on tap, and it went over really well. So we're like, okay, let's brew it again. And we were selling beer wholesale at the time, and it really was clicking outside of the brew pub as well, which was neat to see. I didn't imagine like a wheat would be that beer for us. But like the more we thought about it, the more it made sense. We were like, wait a minute, wheat beer is a call beer at bars.
Yep.
People go up to the bar and they go, hey, what wheats do you have? And I don't even think they know what they mean when they say that.
All right, well, we don't want you to be that person. So a wheat beer is, well, unfortunately, there's a lot of different types of wheat beer. So I'll just name them, and then you can look them up on your own. Hefeweizen, American wheat, dark wheat beers, Crystal, Belgian wheat beer, fruit wheat beers, and there's probably a few more, but that's enough for now. So we'll go back to Max.
But they say it. And
Oh,
then,
they don't.
And then they they get handed Blue
No.
Moon or Shock Top
Yep,
or
yep,
Acre
yep.
White Rascal or something. And local at the time was buzzing still. And IPA, best-selling style in craft beer, still is. Rheingeist really had a stronghold at this point in time with Truth around town. They arguably still do. And that's like their market fit. And Doom started, like, bars kept putting that on and being like, oh, you'll just be our wheat. You'll be our wheat. And I think they got it because they saw what Truth did for Rheingeist. And they were like, oh, like, we can just, like, we'll put call beers up from locals. And so people started putting our wheat on. And it worked. And we kept running with it. And we called it Doom Pedal, just like pedals on a bike. Like, not the best name we've ever come up with.
I love
but,
it.
like, we got in too deep with it because it was just going to be a one-off beer that we just brewed in his memory. But yeah, soft wheat, grain bill on there. There's two different kinds of wheat. So there's like a flaked wheat and then a raw wheat in it.
So Doom Pedal is one of my go-tos so I can't do all the IPAs I want because my head hurts in the morning, right?
I understand that.
So I like, if I need like a lighter, flavorful beer, Doom Pedal is one of the ones I see on a menu. I'm like, that's my beer.
I love that.
All the time.
It,
I told him before we got here on the way, I was like, does 50 West make anything but Doom Pedal? I'm not sure. Like, I know that you do, but when I'm at bars, Doom Pedal, that's my guy.
No, I'm not offended by that because like when I sit at bars and I hear people order it like without looking at a menu, it makes me intensely happy. Like, and I can like feel it in my gut. Like I get like butterflies. I'm like, yes, this guy. And I never say anything. I'm never like, oh, like I made that beer.
I made that beer. Yeah.
But
do you want to hear the story, how and why?
But yeah, so orange peel, coriander, wheat, super light and drinkable, not hoppy, which is a very important thing for
A lot of people.
Yeah, because I think people
Like Brad.
that don't like hops gravitate towards that, and he just ended up with the hoppiest beer.
Yeah, I know, but because I'm very coast to coast.
We're trying to like.
He needs to get off.
We're trying to get him in.
They're trying.
He's got to
they-
stop walking into bars with us and going, "What's the
Yeah.
lightest thing you have on tap?"
Yeah,
But
this-
if you like light, that's fine.
Yeah.
But know why you would like the light.
I will say
that's
this
what I want.
whole brewery tour that the Be Different podcast is doing is really expanding me to other beers. I mean, I'm your typical Bud Light, maybe Budweiser if I feel like it, Peroni, Stella, and I'm off the grid right now.
So we purposely went downstairs and we gave him like the most sour beer ever just because we wanted to see his face. And he drank it before we started rolling. So the face he made was everything I wanted, but he drank it too soon. So you're drinking a sour there and then violently different with the coast to coast. And I see coast to coast.
I see that everywhere too. So
Yeah.
coast to coast, where'd the name come from?
Yeah, so
Max, take
this is
over.
probably like the most intuitive name that we have. So if you look at the can, like you'll see at the one end of the can, there's a Ferris wheel. So that's supposed to represent Ocean City, Maryland. And then if you follow the can, you'll see the Capitol building, and then our brew pub, a little flying pig, like some mile markers, the St. Louis
damn,
Arch.
okay.
Awesome.
This is the story of 50 West. So 50 West is this historic highway that starts in Ocean City, Maryland, ends in California. It like literally, if you pull out of our parking lot and you take a right and you don't stop, you'll end up in San Francisco. And if you take a left and don't stop, you'll end up at the beach in Ocean City,
That's
Maryland.
awesome.
And so we've done it. And
No
Did
way.
you
Yeah.
film it?
yeah, so like if you look around, not in this room, but all downstairs.
Where can I find that content?
So all downstairs, well, we have a ton. So look at our Instagram. There's a lot on
Okay.
there. Those are all photos that we've taken.
But
And
I
it-
want a 10-minute docuseries. That is the coolest
That seems
thing
so cool,
ever,
yeah.
I
dude.
know. So
We'll talk after.
we're trying to get something put together like that. But yeah, when you walk into the brewery, all the photos around the brewery are photos that actually I took. So yeah, when you go downstairs, look around. Those are all pictures of Route 50 taken by us doing
awesome.
this journey. Yeah, so the brand was originally created to be like this adventure, discovery, outdoors brand.
Really?
Yeah.
So, do you guys have plans to capitalize on that name? I heard that there's another location going in a little bit down the road.
Yeah,
on 50 West,
Chillicothe?
right?
Yeah, Chillicothe.
So, are you guys just going to take over 50 West from coast to coast, or what?
Yeah, so
I mean, maybe it takes 8-10 years, but whatever. That's great.
right. So we know that there's this increased competition in craft beer, right? So we go to all the national conferences, we see all the guys, you figure out who the players are and what the right moves are and what the wrong moves are, more importantly at this point in time. And so you have to have a very individualized story and brand and like reason to sell. And for us, it just makes sense. Like, hey, like I was mentioning before, like you have to build this brand. Well, this brand is for us is about this road trip, and all the pieces that you can do, all this active lifestyle pieces that we promote and you can do, around the country. And so we want to grow the brand east and west on 50. And there's these great cities.
Such a cool story, dude.
Yeah, there's these great cities that it passes through: Kansas City, Lake Tahoe, Washington D.C., St. Louis, and basically, like the idea is that we can be seen. Like the story will make sense to these people. So, like in Chillicothe, the brewery that we're going to create in Chillicothe, the building's on 50. Like it's Main Street right there. And like these people are going to be like, yeah, I live on 50. I grew up on 50. I understand what Route 50 is. So then when they walk into the brewery for the first time, we start telling like more of our individualized story of 50. It'll make sense.
But you're already you're essentially associated with them already just because of 50 the road.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I have 50 West, right? Like now this is my 50 West, and it'll be
right.
Good. That's a cool story.
Yeah. So that's kind of the idea, and Chillicothe is the test.
All right, you did mention making a wrong move. Like, I'm just like, what would define a wrong move in your industry? Like that, I'd imagine is more important than making the right move sometimes. Like, how do you avoid making those pitfalls? You're 2012 to 2019. What would be a pitfall you think you guys could make, or maybe you made a mistake in the past?
Yeah, I mean, like the industry as a whole, and I don't want to come off like I know everything. Like we never made this mistake, but you're seeing guys make that like in the past made this mistake. Regional brands like took on bank debt to build their breweries, their capacity for their breweries, and then couldn't distribute because of the intensity of the local scene and all the movement in craft beer. The competition got really, really tough, and they were selling way less beer. And then everyone had to refocus and focus on basically your backyard. And because of that, some guys were over leveraged, and like you're seeing guys sell out to bigger brewers or close. So like that's like kind of an industry. Just
Moral of the story: bank debt.
Yeah, I don't want to call it
sucks.
a trend, but like it's like that's happening in the industry right now.
Well, that makes sense because it has to be a huge financial endeavor to start a brewery.
Yes,
I mean
a production brewery, yes.
Yeah, but the brew. I mean, from the space, especially if you want a tap room inside, you have to have a giant space.
Right.
Greg, I got a stat for you because Greg is a big stat guy. But around 2012, 2013, nationally, there was like right around 2,000 breweries. Now in 2019, there's well over 7,000. So like, do you see a cap on that? Like, is there a certain number, or do you feel like this market is still has so much more where you guys can go?
Yeah, so it flows right into what I was just saying. There's a successful model, so that you can do more. There's the ability for more breweries, and I think like the best analogy that I can give is looking at wine. So like there's like 10 or 12,000 wineries. I think I could be wrong on that number, but something like that in America. And there's like
a huge number.
Yeah, more than beer.
Way more.
And so, but the idea for the fact that breweries can grow is like you just have to choose the right model. Trying to like create a production brewery right now, like if someone came and asked me for advice and said like, hey, I want to start a brewery tomorrow, I'd probably say don't do it. But I'd also say
it's really
for a
hard.
multitude of reasons.
Yeah, it really sucks.
But like what you could do and be successful at, absolutely, is create a neighborhood bar that makes its own beer, and you don't have to distribute. And I'm not going to name too many specifics unless it's like around people that I admire. But like the guys at Nine Giant in Pleasant Ridge, I actually ran into them in 2014. I think we were in Portland. for the Craft Brewers Conference, and those guys were a couple years away from even opening their doors, but they already had the foresight and could see it, and they were like, hey, like I think the plan for success here is like just open up like a bar that makes its own beer that can provide a certain kind of experience for that neighborhood, and you serve that neighborhood as its community hub and third space. And those guys already saw it back then, and I was like, wow, that's that's really smart of you guys to already be thinking like this. And then you've seen it pan out for them. That's exactly what they are. They're like this really steady bar in Pleasant Ridge that like you walk by at any given day. They serve awesome food. It's packed. They got good beer. It like design looks cool in there. And they don't have these like great ambitions to try to go distribute their beer all around town, because like that's a totally different animal in business and game. And it's like, these guys are like, nope, we know what we're going to do, and we know how to like make this safe and successful. And they did that well. So I think there's room for more of that. There can be lots more Nine Giants of the world. You just have to choose the right location.
Are you from Cincinnati?
Yes.
Why do you think there's a specific reason that breweries work so well in this area? There's over 50 now.
Or do you think it's just everywhere? Or do you think Cincinnati's got to be some sort of...
I think in this area, like in that, like a 45-minute radius, only one brewery's gone out of business in the past 5 years.
Because Cincinnatians
you
are
can
alcoholics.
say his name. Scott works for us.
Oh, I know. I don't know. I just heard that there was one. I don't know who it is.
There's a couple. The one you're probably thinking about is Blank Slate.
Yeah.
Scott LaFollette, awesome dude. He's our production manager.
Oh, okay.
Awesome person. Really great beer maker. Didn't like quite set up his business the right way, but was making great beer, and now he makes our beer.
But do you think there's a reason it does so well in this area?
Yeah, I mean it's speculation. It's like a hard question to answer, but like I have an answer for it, and I think it would be. It's kind of like the same reason that like OTR did well in Cincinnati. So like that part of the answer is demographic. Like there was enough young people and people that like were going to be attracted to like this local movement and the artisanal movement, and kind of like open to this idea of that, like a premium product being made locally. And then coupled on top of that, like Cincinnati's a super homer city. Like if you it's the Reds, it's the Bengals. We like get behind these sports teams that like aren't that great, and then like we all like love Skyline and La Rosa's, and like other people from other parts of the country are like, "What the fuck are you eating?" Oh, I said, "Fuck, sorry."
It's okay.
Oh, it's okay. Bleep, no big deal.
Yeah, I like how I said it twice. You said it and said it again.
It's all good.
So I think that the people in Cincinnati, like the type of person that we are attracted to that, and then at the same time, those are the right demographic for it, and just craft beer for the whole country started going that way.
Absolutely.
Beer for the whole country started going towards craft. So, like, we're a big enough city to support that many as well. So I think that's probably my answer. Is we're big enough, the right demographic, and like Cincinnati is like our personalities uniquely attracted to this sort of thing.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I was just in Detroit last weekend. I mean, there's breweries everywhere there, and the urban development in the downtown area is incredible, and people are moving down there. Same thing's happening in Grand Rapids, where my younger brother lives. It's like this resurgence of living in a city and being more artistic and being more local. Like I do feel that happening in a lot of places.
I actually got a Founders down in Naples last weekend.
Oh yeah. Those guys are huge.
Yeah,
they're
I was shocked to see it
I
on
was,
the list.
I was wondering where you got that tan. I know it wasn't from working all day.
I've been, beaching, on the beach for 40 minutes. Let the sand just take the skin off my body.
drinking all day IPAs.
Yes, of course, of course.
All right, hey Max. Well, thank you so much for your time. We probably took a few more minutes than what I had initially told you, but we appreciate you just being transparent.
We like to
opening
lie.
up.
We like to lie, get you on mic, and then keep you way longer.
Yeah, but I mean, it was awesome stuff.
This was super fast. Good. It's good.
And so we always end with essentially the same question. I mean, our name is Be Different, and we're highlighting Cincinnati brands, Cincinnati people, and to kind of close it out for our listeners, what makes you and 50 West different?
Yeah, so I think it's the experience that we give in the tap room. It's the inclusion of the active lifestyle. It's it's inclusion of the active lifestyle. It's how we created really strong branding as a foundation for how we were going to sell our and make and sell our products. So I think that's probably the answer. A lot of breweries will start and then as an afterthought come back to the brand and create a story. Like they just name it something cool and then they come back and they're like, oh, like what's our story? Let's figure it out so we can push it. We had the opposite approach. It was let's create a really cool brand and then build that brand slowly so that people understand it. So when they finally do see that can on the shelf, they're going to want to grab it because we've built a brand awareness and equity. And I think what differentiates us the most is the active lifestyle stuff. So it's the volleyball, it's the canoe and kayak, it's the cycling, it's the fact that we're out and about doing these things around beer and creating communities.
All right, Max, thank you for that. And if you're listening, go to 50 West right now. Just get in your car. Forget if you're at work. Just take a beeline.
Go to 50 West.
Get on the road. Go to 50 West. Get yourself a Doom pedal. Get yourself a Coast to Coast. Get whatever you feel like for the day and enjoy it. Get some food as well. Play some
follow
volleyball,
their
bike.
Instagram so that
Yeah.
they can see those awesome pictures
Absolutely.
that Max took down both ways.
I can't take credit for him anymore. Instagram's totally run by an
Okay.
awesome photographer that works here. But
Okay, come in to
great.
look at the pictures.
The ones on the wall are mine. Totally.
That's right.
Totally.
And stay tuned to the Be Different podcast as we continue the Be Different Brewery Tour. For Brad Redford, Nick Given, Greg Wichard, we are out of here.
Thanks, guys.